Last week, I discussed my essential mastering plugins that I use day in and day out with my clients. This week, I'm going to go over some core concepts that you need to think about when trying to master your own music. Okay, first I want to preface this video and let you know that this is all opinionated. These are my opinions, and they don't mean that they are the end-all be-all. I'm going to go over some core concepts when it comes to mastering and my beliefs. First thing we're going to talk about is all-in-one mastering plugins. Things like Ozone and things like that, great plugins, but not my preference for mastering. There are some features in there that I don't feel are necessarily mastering functions, for example, Reverb, which I'll get into later. And if you're a solo producer and just trying to do this as a hobby or just try to get your tracks mastered, these plugins are great. But for me, they're not the answer for mastering. I prefer to use a lot more analog style plugins and just the basics. And the reasons, I'm going to explain that as we get into this video. But that's number one, all-in-one units, not for me. I want to talk about the why and going back to the basics. First, you need to have a solid understanding of the tools at hand. And as I get into some of these tools and concepts, I think things will start to make a lot more sense. But getting into the basics, understanding EQ, understanding compression, understanding limiting, these are the three keys to mastering. So make sure you understand them extremely well. If you missed my first video on setting up your room and understanding frequencies in this 4-part series, I'd suggest you go back and check that out. Now, going back to the basics is crucial. So hit those study books, learn what those EQs do, learn what that compressor does, learn what that limiter does. I can't stress this enough. EQ is your best friend. This is so important. EQ is what makes or breaks masters. When I get masters in that have problems, EQ is the first thing I have to do. It's always the first thing I do. EQ is the first stage when it comes to mastering. You're going to fix problems and do any corrective EQ, and then you're going to use EQ and other tools to enhance the sound quality. That goes for singles and albums. If you're mastering albums, first you're going to find the problems and correct them, and then you're going to use EQ to try to balance and make everything sound somewhat cohesive. It's so important to really know EQ, and to really know EQ, you need to understand frequencies, and that's where the ear training comes into play. If you missed part 2 of this series, leave you a link up above. Go check that out. So important on how EQ matters. Be gentle with your compression. A lot of people think mastering and the key to getting loudness is compressing the hell out of your tracks. That is not correct. I use very light compression when mastering. In fact, I actually am choosing compressors that give more of a color and a sound for what I'm trying to do. Compression is there to tame the peaks and helps you achieve loudness, but more importantly, helps you achieve color and gives you a certain feel and vibe to the master. Some people think mastering involves using reverb, and although this is my opinion, I say no. I do not add reverb during mastering. That is a mix engineer function and should only be done in the mixing stage. I understand the concept of adding reverb to glue things together, but that would mean altering that person's mix, and that is not something that I try to do when mastering. I try to remain very transparent and only enhance what's already there and fix problems. Therefore, adding reverb to me is not something that I personally would do to your masters. Stereo imaging during mastering. Although I rarely ever have to do this, stereo imaging can be something that is done during mastering if there is only a problem. I do not believe in widening your tracks after at the mastering stage. That should be done in the mixing stage. The only time I will ever use stereo imaging is if I notice a problem between the left and the right channels. I recently mastered a 10-song album just the other week that did have 2 tracks that were just slightly more to the right than the left, and it was extremely noticeable. So I could have had him fix everything in the mix, but he asked me to just take care of it in the mastering, and I just ever so slightly imaged that back over so it was a little bit more even. You know, that is somewhat important. Although you want a good balance between the left and the right with the mix, You don't want the whole master veering off to one side because sounds are all panned to the right or all to the left. So you can kind of tilt that back over or either which way. But I really do try to stay away from stereo imaging during mastering. This is an opinion. This is, once again, my opinion. If a client asks me to make a track wider during mastering, I mean, there are some tricks to doing that without using widening tools. You can use mid-side EQ. And if you check out my episode on mid-side EQ during mastering, you can learn more about that. I'll leave you a link up above. But using widening tools can introduce some phase problems, so you got to be very cautious with that. And I don't believe in using widening tools and adjusting stereo imaging during mastering unless it's absolutely necessary to fix a problem. Leading right into phase issues, make sure you check for phase issues. Should be one of the first things you do when setting up for mastering. If you have any phase issues and you run forward with those masters, when those masters get collapsed into mono, say on an iPhone or a Bluetooth speaker, you're going to have sounds disappear. And if you're not catching that at the mastering stage, you've got a problem. Some mix engineers or inexperienced producers will introduce a lot of phase problems. Some sounds, synths and VSTs or just sample pack sounds already have phase problems in them, and you need to fix that in the mixing stage. So as a mastering engineer, I try to stay on top of looking for phase cancellation issues and letting my clients know if there is something that we need to address in the mix. Saturation and clipping. Some people like to use saturation during mastering, and if you guessed it, I will too, if needed. If the song is already loud and doesn't need saturation, I will probably stay away from it because all it's going to do is cause some unwanted issues with the peaks, and it could dilute some of the bass. You need to be careful with using saturation with tracks with a lot of low end. However, if I need some extra harmonics or I need volume, saturation can be your friend. So do I use saturation during mastering? Yes, but it depends. Once again, this is my opinion. Everybody's entitled to their own. Another thing that I hear people doing is using clippers during mastering, which is, kind of like saturation, but you're just chopping off those peaks. I'm not personally a fan of using clippers or any type of clipping during mastering. I don't want to alter people's mixes, and if I'm chopping off peaks, I'm altering your dynamics. Not a good thing for me, in my opinion. I hope these concepts and tips helped you out. If you are interested in getting a free sample from me, maybe your masters are not coming out the way you want, maybe you've worked with a mastering engineer you're not happy with, I offer all first-time clients one free stereo mastered sample. Hit the link down below and hit me up. I'd love to chat with you. I also offer free mix advice with all mastering clients, and I like to develop a relationship with my clients so that there's repeat business and we have an open line of communication. Now, if you have any questions, please shoot me a comment down below, and thank you for watching this video. My name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering. Please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. Have a great day.